not armed. The government has all the apparatus of state to be able to quell and then subdue, oppress, and do whatever they like to those who try to oppose them. But now the military that has the gun, they have come to do it. So it is not justifiable. But the point is that politicians will now know that if they continue to engage in constitutional coups, they will be ready for military coups. Unfortunately, it is the people, the citizens who are in the middle of all this that will become the casualty. Democracy is the casualty, and the people are suffering the more. But we have to watch it because the people also have to now rise up. They did so in Burkina Faso to chase away former President Blaise Compaoré, a military man who transmuted or morphed into civilian rule and was there for almost for 20 years or so after killing his friend Sankara. Are you?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, sir. Now, recently, the ECOWAS Association suspended Guinea over this coup. Do you think that the association, or the organization rather, should have done something to prevent it, especially during the time of the elections when the constitutional coup, like you said, happened?
Yes, and that is the reason. It was actually yesterday that ECOWAS met. Everybody is condemning the military coup and all that. But you say, it's like you have a staple where you keep horses, and then the horses are bolting away, and then you begin to chase. That is what is happening. They are now crying after over spilled milk. Like you said, it could have been prevented. When leaders are now tinkering with the constitution, that is the time that the alarm bell ought to ring. And then you nip it in the bud and not wait until it has happened. Look at Mali. Mali, it happened in August last year. This is 1 year, and there has been another one. So there have been 2 military coups within 1 year in Mali. And it's all because of bad governance, bad leadership that has produced that. So politicians must now help themselves and their countries and the citizens and Africa to play by the rules. If the Constitution says 2 terms, why go ahead and change it, changing the rule in the middle of the game? And then if the Constitution says, these are the rights and responsibilities of, the citizens, and they also have a duty towards the government by, for instance, paying their taxes, doing their, civic duties and all that. Now, government has now a responsibility to protect their lives, provide, look into their well-being, provide education, social services like health services, and not be chronic. Don't become one. Be inclusive in the appointment. Don't go and get people from your own tribe or your own religion or your family or or your friends. Yes, you can, but the problem is that even when you get these people, they are also incompetent. And what you have, corruption, greed, avarice, compared, now veering on wickedness. Because if you or a few people in a country are the ones enjoying all the resources in the country and the majority are suffering, that is wickedness. Because how much food do you need to eat? How many beds do you need to sleep for a man? And a woman? How many houses do you need? How many cars do you need to ride at a time? So these are the issues. I think that, the political class will do, redeem themselves, do themselves a favor. You saw from the picture that was trending, you saw somebody who was now taken from the presidential palace. He couldn't even button his shirt. Is that what? And then you saw him where he was wrapping himself like a refugee. But yet, African leaders cannot, or political class cannot learn from that. Leadership is about service. It's about the other people. And then when you take care of them, and you are serving them. You are their servant, and not the other way around. And so until they understand that orientation, I don't know whether what should be done to drum it into their head that leadership is about service and not about selfishness or catering for their own and their family needs.
Remember that you can join this conversation simply by raising up your digital hand, and I'll try to accommodate as much questions and comments as possible. Now, you've said a whole lot of things, a lot of interesting things, but remember in history when the military coup was everywhere in African countries before democracy came and removed the coup. Do you think that these domino effects that happened then can repeat itself, or do you think African countries have developed to the extent that we have no fear of this domino theory?
Well, I thought we had passed this stage because this was taking us back to that age, that days where, of military dictatorship. They were all over the place. Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea, everywhere, most places, Burkina Faso. It was the in thing about, some decades ago. But I thought that having moved from there, for instance, the 16 members of 15 member states of ECOWAS will, profess that they are a democracy or running democratic government. But what is happening now is that they are using the democratic culture to now, invite undemocratic behavior that is now like this constitutional coup that I told you. They are now tinkering with the Constitution because they will tell you the Constitution, we are following the Constitution. But which Constitution are you following? The one that you drew by yourself, the one that didn't have the popular, because in many constitutions today, you see there they say, we the people have decided. But how many people? The people didn't decide. A few people now, not the majority, but a few of them decided to do this in their own favor. Because if you are changing the constitution so you can run for 3 terms, it has now ceased to be a product of the majority. It has become your own personal document, which you can now change at will. But that is not so. Domino effect, whatever you call it, Africa couldn't resist those, democratic wind that blew across the whole world. And but what is happening is that there is now a decline, very dangerous and worrisome decline that is happening with all these coups. Remember, there was an assassination of a leader in Chad, and then a military where Idris Deby's son took over as head of state. There was a military coup recently in Niger. There were coups too in Mali and now in Guinea. So where next? And so you can see we are no longer talking about consolidation of democracy. We are now thinking about, where is it? Where will the government be toppled by the military? And that is not good for Africa. I think that narrative must change.
Exactly. And over time now, we have seen that countries abuse or misuse the provisions of democracy, be it elections, be it census, and other provisions of democracy. Do you think that the democracy now, considering this, is the best form of government in African countries? And if you do not think so, or if you think so rather, how can democracy be adjusted to fit African countries?
Well, I will say, some people will say if education is not good, but try ignorance. I think so many systems of government have been tried. Dictatorship, monarchy, oligarchy, and all kinds. But democracy from over time has proved itself to be the one that provides for the possibility, for the opportunity, for the electorate to change their leadership by voting. And then there is time limit. If those are some of the provisions that it's not forever. There is a given time, a duration. If you are elected and you are not doing well, there is that provision for regular election that gives the electorate, the citizens, the chance to say, listen, Augusta, you didn't do well in the past 2 or 4 years, so give another person a chance. Or yes, your deeds or your accomplishments speak for you, so we are giving you another term. And then they even went further to say, okay, in the US, it is 10, once you do how many years, 8 years or so, and so on and so forth. So 8 years, 10 years, but this idea of going beyond that, because what you cannot achieve within this period of 2 terms, I don't know how long, because diminishing returns will set in. So I think democracy may not be the best, but of all the lot of systems of government that has been tried, it has proved itself to be, amenable and effective. So, but it is not just the system, but the people, the operators, because you can have a wonderful constitution. You can call it anything. So I also agree with you that Africans may not, be following sheepishly what the other people are doing. So if they call it democracy, then you must do it. They have now to look at what works for them. Homegrown kind of, system that can accommodate. Listen, Africa had a governance system even before the colonial masters came. In Mali, for instance, where if they wanted to settle any disputes, they have what they use the toguna. Toguna means it's like a hut, a palaver hut, a place where you go and settle your disputes. The Romans, they had their own market, square, where they do that. But in Mali, what Toguna was doing is that if there was any problem, the community head and the leaders, they all gather, and then people, it's like a very short hut where you have to bend to go in, and everybody, when you are there, you must be able to settle whatever brought you there before you go. And because they try, it brings some equilibrium, some leveling that anybody, when you are there, whether you are tall, you are short, or whatever, so you cannot stand up, you are sitting on a mat, and you cannot raise your hand or in anger or whatever. You just have to stay there until that issue is settled. And everybody will now leave that place happy that, the problem has been resolved. Because there is in life is about conflict resolution. It's about conflict dispute management. So you cannot say that there will be no dispute. And so in politics, you cannot say that there will be no disagreement. So people will disagree with you. All you need to do, listen to them, and then also be inclusive. Bring women, bring youth, bring everybody represented, the minorities. Don't go for a government. That is what democracy does. It allows for all this, inclusivity. It also brings the level of, there are rights, responsibilities, duties. Everybody, the citizens will know their rights, which will go with certain responsibility. The government will enjoy the the authority of making laws and then bringing citizens to in check when they were to regulate behavior. But at the same time, they also have a duty to provide the citizens to take care of their welfare, protect lives and property, and then show that, provide the services that will make life conducive for everybody. And for that, if you now put yourself forward, because it's not oligarchy, is not monarchy, if you put yourself forward, you then go and campaign, canvass, and tell people, what will you do when you are elected? And then you are held now to those campaign promises. If you now fail to deliver, then they can vote you out. These are some of the characteristics that makes the democracy much more amenable to governance than all the other systems of that exist. And so is the one that has been embraced by the world. And so why can't Africa do it if every other person is doing it? But let it be now ingrained in what works for Africa. Don't make it, you integrate it into the African system, tradition. Jettison those traditions that are destructive or that are not forward-looking. But look at those things that work. You can copy those and then mix it with what you have and then move on. After all, there are people, for instance, just recently in Zambia, even as we speak, the president there, Lungi, was defeated by opposition. And so that is welcome news. Even Conde was in opposition for so many years. And you wonder, for somebody who has come from that rank, has gone through, he was in prison, he was in exile, for when you now take power, is there anything that intoxicates in this power that will make, African politicians not remember, that where they are coming from, and or that power is transient. Even if they stay there for 20 years, they will still go. So why don't you leave a legacy that people will remember you by? People today still remember Nelson Mandela of South Africa, who stayed for almost 27 years in prison under apartheid regime. When he came out, he ruled for only 4 years and then resisted this kind of urge of going for second term or third term. Those are the examples that modern African leaders should emulate.
Okay, you just said a system that works for Africa. Now, let me remind you of the Ujamaa system of Julius Nyerere. This was a system he tried to implement at that time, but the problem was with the implementation. Will you agree that the problem is not democracy, but the implementation of democratic practice?
I said so. That is not really the system, it's the operators. So it doesn't matter what system you want to invent or what constitution you want to bring. If those who are operating that system or the constitution are not democratic, or they don't believe in democracy, it's not going to work. If they don't believe, or they have the tendency to abuse the system, look at what we have now in Nigeria, not just, or in most places in Africa, where judges are conniving with lawyers to now be dishing out court cases and that affect elections. So it's no longer, you no longer depend on the ballot box to win elections. Instead, what you do, you rig and then ask your whoever is crying, you can go to court, knowing that you can go to court and buy a verdict, buy a judgment. So these are some of the challenges. So everybody will now have to sit up, both the judiciary, the parliament, and then the executive. You also seen that the legislature, look at Nigerian legislature, they are now talking about election, the electoral bill, the amendment to it. They are talking about the issue of transmission of results electronically. And you saw the argument. It was as if, using technology was something that is alien. Everybody has cell phone. This program we are on has been enabled by technology. People, everywhere you go, it is, they ask you, you go to bank, they take your biometrics, the same thing they are doing in election. And they're saying, if to complete that process, if you registered biometrically, you are voted biometrically or using technology, why don't you also use the same technology to, transmit the result so that you prevent the old practice and very flawed practice of having to carry results over a long stretch. From there, I'm telling you, over 1 kilometer, anything can happen. They can waylay those who are carrying, they can change the thing, they would have written their own result, and then come and then just take whatever it is, the document that is being taken to the collection center and replace it. But if you transmitted it from that polling unit, after everybody has agreed, the party agents, electoral officials, and some of the voters are also there. They have seen when you were counting that this is and then you registered it. Why can't you what are we talking about? Just enter party A, party B, party C. This is what you got, and then it's entered in a book, and then you either like you are sending a photo, like you are making a snapshot of it and sending to the collection center. That's what it is. But why are politicians against it? Because that's analog and flawed and system of hand carrying it, because it will provide them with the opportunity to tamper with the result. They want to tamper with the result, and that is unconstitutional. So I think one is now appealing to Nigeria, because Africa is looking up to Nigeria, Augusta. That is the point. ECOWAS cannot work without Nigeria. And Nigeria has more than about 210 million people, blacks. That is the largest black nation on earth. So the rest of Africa, they will look at what Nigeria is doing to take a cue. If Nigeria gets it wrong, then the whole of Africa is doomed. So that is why there is this attention on Nigeria. And I hope Nigerians get it right, both the legislature, the judiciary, the executive, to make sure that they show example in leadership.
Okay, now, to what extent is the failure of democracy in Africa a failure of the civil society, the absence of the organized civil society to engage and hold politicians accountable?
Well, I won't say there is failure of democracy. I think the people have failed democracy. That is the issue. And so civil society, yes, I think they need to do more. Some of them have become more, they serve those who fund them. That is the issue. They say who pays the, whatever the tone dictates the tune. Who pays the piper dictates the tune. So some of them will listen and follow the dictates of those who are funding them. But I also know that there are some very, critical civil society organizations that they've been crying. Some of them in Guinea, for instance, some of them were crying and saying, listen, do something, this is not good. In Benin, the last time they held the election, do you know that a woman presidential candidate is still held in detention in Benin, and nobody is talking about it. And now government is charging her and others with terrorism, because the point is that give a dog a bad name and then you can hang it. A woman involved in terrorism, just because she has the courage to come out and challenge the president, President Talon. The same thing, you go to Uganda, is the same. You saw how Museveni was hard on the opposition, the young man that was there trying to come out. Everywhere you go, in Cote d'Ivoire, you saw how President Alassane Ouattara, what he did. In fact, he copied Conde's textbook by also changing the constitution of the country for a third term. So it is not a failure of constitution or democracy. It is the failure of the operators, those who, politicians, African political class. I don't even call them leaders. These are commissioned agents. They are working for themselves and their families and their cronies. They are not, at times they bring religion to divide the people, or they bring ethnicity to divide the people. These are political things, that they endure, to playing on the psychology of the masses. But again, the masses, if there are people that have also failed, the masses have also failed themselves. How? Because they need to rise up. It is not enough when Conde was changing that constitution. Of course, people were killed because they rose, but they have to remain there, stay on the message, insist on what is right, insist on democracy, insist on justice, insist on equity, insist on integrity of the election. Don't wait, don't say, I'm not going to vote. Go and register. After registration, go and vote. After voting, stay and see that your vote is counted. And it is they count it and it's counted. And then follow, ask questions about those who are leading, who are your representatives. Many people in Nigeria, for instance, in Africa, they don't know their local representatives. All they do, some of them just go to this center, collect money, and then drive big cars, or throw, crumbs to them, and then they hail them, Rankadede, and that is the end. Until another election, when there is an election, they remember you. They give you 1,000 naira or a bag of rice, or they ask you to go and die on their behalf to rig election. And after that, you won't see them until next election. So that should change. The people must also now rise up, take their own destiny in their own hands by asking questions, by being critical, by demanding accountability from those that they have elected. In fact, many people don't go for election. They sit down, they say, or the one that we voted the other time, or we know that it will not count. Whether you vote or you don't vote, the politician will declare results, and they will take decisions that will affect you. So you must make sure that you participate to vote them out. Bring the people that you want, that they have done now in the Zambia. Where opposition will win. Somebody who came and promised heaven and is only delivering hell. The next election, vote him or her out. And so on and so forth. Don't wait for because some of them, I will tell you, I saw the picture from from Guinea. Some of those who benefited from the government of Conde were now jubilating when the military has taken over. But just wait for 1 or 2 months. The honeymoon will be over, because questions will now be asked. Will the military deliver? Are they doing what they are doing? And the other thing that I must add here is that we don't want to follow this motion of once the military took over, you ask them to hand over quickly. They rush one election and then go back to the barracks. And then they give what you call poison chalice to whoever will now come and take the reins of power. Because they need to set up the structure for the democracy to take root. Democracy is not, it is a process. It's not an event. You have to go and vote and let it grow. You will make mistakes along the line. But as time goes on, America, they are how many years old? You know when they started, well, but you saw what former President Trump tried to do. But you saw that the American system was able to withstand what the powerful man that they put him there. They said no. Even when he tried to engineer the crowd to attack the Capitol, the politicians at one point, his vice president said no. We have to approve this election, validate this election. All this your talk about fraud, it doesn't hold water. And do you know what happens? Some of the lawyers, and that's what some other countries like Nigeria will now have to emulate. Lawyers continue to go to court to abuse the court processes. And recently, a judge in Michigan, lambasted them, 9 of them. Not only like telling them, how can you know that what you are doing is wrong? How can you be dragging the legal system to that to disrepute? She asked them to pay the legal fees of their opponents, and also asked them to go and do some community work, and recommended that they go and face disciplinary committee. That is the kind of deterrent measures that need to happen. A judge cannot just sit down when they bring anything, you rule. Some are calling it kangaroo, some are saying it's black market, because you cannot, it doesn't hold water. The kind of things that some of the judges, they are conflicting, and then they don't make sense. So why should they judge in their true sense? The learned people, or and the lawyers connive to now become because they are the ones, the threats that democracy has in Africa. And much of the electoral disputes end up in courts now. And then it is the court that is deciding. That is a dangerous trend. The outcome of an election should be at the polling station, polling booth at the collection center. Once you make it an extraneous kind of thing, it ceases to be democracy. It is now what you call the judicialization of electoral process, and that is not what they intend. The drafters of constitutions or pro-democracy activists. That is not the idea of how democracy should run. So it is not about the system. It is not about the constitution. More about those who are practicing it and what they do with it. That is the issue.
Okay, thank you so much. You've spoken a lot. Now remember that you can join the conversation simply by raising up your digital hand, and I'll try to accommodate as much question and comment as possible. Let's see the first comment and question. Dr. Nwankwo Uwaizigwe, I can see your hand. I have asked you to unmute, so I think you should be able to unmute now.
Thank you, my brother, for your excellent analysis. But then I should have expected you to look at the Guinea coup within the trajectory of the political dynamics of the West African sub-region, giving flesh to the situation in Guinea,
my phone,
and the situation in Chad also. You've been a strong critic of the French domineering approach in West Africa, and I had expected you to put in something about the French interests in these 3 coups that happened. First, let us look at the Guinean situation. You find that in Guinea, you have 4 major ethnic groups: the Madinka, the Fula, that's Fulani, the Susu, and the Kisi. And over time, the Fulani have been struggling to take over power. They've been in opposition. But the Madinka, in collusion with the Susu and the Kisi, they feel that the Fulani people are actually, strangers, immigrants from Guinea. But, well, that is, I'm not here to contest their argument, but that's, that is their own argument. And from Sekou Touré all to Conte and then to Alpha Conde to the present one, apart from Conte, who came from Susu, the rest have been from Madinka ethnic group. And the reason actually for the present coup, I don't think it has nothing to do with the ethnic disparity, except that the commander of the chief protector of the president had to use the available, sentimental disjunctures within the system to legitimate his takeover. First, you should also realize that that is a day before the coup. The present leader had a heated argument with the defense minister over the cut in their budget. There was severe cut in military budget. And also the refusal for the government to grant the presidential guard autonomy from the main command of the army. These were the two issues he went in to argue with the defense minister, and there was serious argument. And the following day, while the president was going to hold an official engagement in a hotel in Kona, they just picked him up and announced his takeover. So first of all, we look at it first from the trajectory of personal conflict and personal interest, and not ethnic, because both of them belong to ethnic group. Secondly, we look at the international trajectory. When France now comes in, for some time, Alpha Conde have been at loggerheads with Macron. They've not been in good terms, not because of a term, actually, because French, if you look at their their history, they don't have the culture of changing, just like Germany. They don't have, their democracy does, or even Britain, the democracy does not give time limits or years or time limits. As long as you are capable and people can vote for, even if you can last for 100 years, no problem. Britain, France, and and Germany. So time limit is not there. So the issue, what concerns French is stability in their own countries, in their own shadow colonies now. That was a bit, he had serious problem. And that actually led to the man to take over. And for this man to have been taken over, with France not giving strong criticism over the coup, it meant that he received French interest, and being also a former French army officer trained by France before being drafted to become the commander of the presidential guard, by this president. So we try to look at the French imperial interests, just as also see in the case of Chad. When the president died, by constitutional means, the person who should have taken the position is, was the president of the National Assembly, according to the constitution. Unfortunately for him, the president of the National Assembly is a Christian and from the South. The kingdom. And they felt because the Northerners, Northerners have actually taken them. France felt that this man, if he's left in power, might not, because France, having been in charge of the military network of, Dabi's military network, knew the strength of the army and knew the force. That he knew that if he allows that man to come in based on the constitution, there might be crisis. He might not be able to, to muster the necessary support from the military to enable him pursue specific French interests. which were there. So that is trajectory of the then coming to that of Mali. You find that it's just a combination of French interest and internal rivalry. The second coup just came because the people put there felt that they had become so powerful that they could not make changes without consonance, you know, to the people who put them in power. Changing cabinet, just, you know, rivalry, you remove somebody and put somebody without a notice, then we decided to remove you. But the actual point is that there, France needed a strong leader, the form of a military, to help them coordinate the battle going on there, because Mali, like Nigeria, is in a crisis. You have then the Dogo people fighting with the Fulani over grazing rice and destruction of farm products. And then you also have the Tuaregs militants coordinating with Islamic State. So France needed a strong person, possibly from the Bambara ethnic group, which is the majority ethnic group there, to take over. And that was why, whether the legitimacy or illegitimacy, you know, stigmatization adopted by ECOWAS or, you know, whose. The point is that France recognizes the presence of that government. So the West African, you know, for example, don't you see that it is double standard if the same people who acknowledged and accepted the Chadian coup as a necessity we also turn back to stigmatize the coup in Mali and the coup in Guinea as being an antithesis to the principles of ECOWAS. So that is the way we have to look at it, and not really because of the constitution, because of Tete and Bede or whatever. Alassane Ouattara is there, is gradually making peace with Babu, and even the expected crisis that should have arisen from the Tete and Bede did not arise. And there's a, you know, gradual watering down of the crisis there. So it's not actually the third, you know, the second or third or fourth bid or change of the constitution that matters. What actually determines the strength or the continued legitimacy or illegitimacy of a given regime, if you bring in the case of Nigeria, is either the backing, the collusion, or the antagonism of a given patron power. Like in the case of Nigeria, if Britain turns back today and say, look, we are not backing this government, and America said, we are not backing this government, this is what we should do to bring peace in this country, definitely they will do it. But then, because there's strong disconnect between those who are actually feeling the pains in Nigeria and those who possess the international power to force the leaders to make the changes, it appears that everything in Nigeria is helpless. But in the case of French countries, France has called the shot, and none of them can question France. And that is why, if you go to Senegal today, where Macky Sall is ruling, if you look at the list, all the past presidents, they normally retire in Paris. No other, they don't stay at home. So that is the strength of the matter. We should look at it from the trajectory of the imperial, of the neo-colonial interests of France, and also on the internal conflict existing between the leaders. As for members, as for the group suffering, it does not actually concern the big powers. What they know is their own economic interests, which can only be sustained by what? By a friendly power. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And due to time constraints, I'll ask that the next people that want to make their submissions should please try to keep their submissions as limited as possible. Hopefully in a minute or less. But let us listen to our guest. Let him react to this submission from Dr. Nwankwo Tony Wizigwe.
Okay.
Mr. Okay, you're here.
Or
yes,
is there
please go
somebody
ahead and comment.
And is there anybody who wanted to make a comment?
Okay, let me take all the comments and then let me take the comments and then I'll just let you.
Exactly.
And let you comment at once. Okay, so I have another hand here, Mazi Okoye. Mazi Okoye.
Yeah, Augusta, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's all well and good talking about all these dynamic cues and are they not? There is a noise there. I don't know what that is.
I've taken care of it. Please go on.
Yeah. Or in terms of what external forces are trying to do, what they're not trying to do. But the way I see it is more like that our leaders and us, as masses of Africans, do not understand what democracy is. We don't understand yet the fundamentals of democracy. You know, sometimes when you listen to some people in Africa, especially in Nigeria these days, you know, someone said that democracy is politics is a game of numbers. Politics is a game of numbers. You then ask yourself, what? This is a meaningless statement because democracy itself does not say anything about numbers. Democracy came about from a philosophical reflection of a Greek philosopher that got in time developed to be what it is today. There's no way numbers come into it. But we Africans, like everything we touch, has reduced it to a crude manipulation of numbers, whereby everyone is chasing numbers by crook or by hook. That's why you have a lot of rigging just to rig the numbers. Nobody thinks about the principles or the fundamentals or what they should be thinking in terms of what they are voting for. For example, in the West here, somebody that belongs in the Labour Party, it will take, I don't know what it's going to take for that person to cast his or her vote for a conservative. Why is that? But there are two political parties. If you have to define them on the surface, you might say that the Tories are robbing the poor to give to the rich. And you say that the Labour Party is robbing the rich to give to the poor. But it goes deeper than that. But a Labour Party member or Conservative Party member will never, ever, cross, only in exceptional circumstances. And it doesn't happen that often. And you don't hear politicians over here or anywhere in the West, make that comment that politics is a game of numbers. That is a no-no, because it doesn't make sense. Because democracy goes far deeper than just, calling people out to come and cast votes for you. It goes deeper than that. It goes to the belief or how you want your society to be, to the future of your society. That's why our people, sometimes, I feel pity for them, because you always, that's why some people will come around and give them like 10 naira or 20 naira. I ask them to go and vote, they will go and vote because they don't know any better. They don't know that before you cast that vote, you have to understand not just that the person you are voting for will represent what you believe, but that belief has been something, that has a historical background, not just I will go and cast a vote and then you go and cast a vote and that will solve all your problems. No, that is not democracy. It's the wrong way of seeing democracy. I know systems are fine, and all that. But that in itself is not also democracy. And that's why we are failing today. We're kind of chasing shadows when we see democracy as in terms of, okay, the sort of dynamics of parties or the dynamics of what the external forces, like external governments, are trying to influence in our own politics. It goes deeper than that. It goes to who we are, what we believe in, how do we want our society to be. I think our guest mentioned about integrating the system of the West, what is good there with our own sort of system in Africa, what we got going before the Westerners came. You ask, okay, what is that we have before the Westerners came? We have a customary court, for example, where, in Igbo land, you have your kingsmen settle issues, for example, land disputes, for example. But the world has moved on since then. I know there's still land issues going on, disputes going on, but the kind of cases that the democracy deals with these days goes far beyond what, that kind of customary courts deal with. Yes, it has its own place, in terms of, okay, for example, naming and shaming somebody, for example, which we still have here in the Western country. We still have that culture of naming and shaming somebody that has done a bad thing. In our custom, we do something like that. We have something like Asinamado, Melalo, for example. That person, will be sent out from the community to go and atone for whatever that is did. And everybody in the community will know that person as somebody, Melalo, that is equivalent to shaming and naming that we have here. So democracy and the way we see it got to fundamentally change, not just see it as a game. It's not a game. It's more like a philosophical understanding of how your life has to be lived, how you can pursue your own happiness, bearing in mind your own neighbor's happiness in mind. Also, not just, okay, numbers. And I want to add a little question to our guest before I end my submission. And the question is, I want him to in a way tell me or tell us whether he thinks that democracy, as he sees it, is, for example, if looking at the Western world, is a product of philosophical sort of deliberation and reflection over time in terms of how to live life better, compared with the way we see it in Africa, where we see it as purely game of numbers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Let us listen to our guest and allow him to comment.
Yeah, of course, I didn't hear you. Is there
Mr.
any other
Ejime,
person?
are you there?
Is there somebody else that is talking?
No, that's all the comments, right?
Okay, thank you, Bazi Okoye. Maybe.
No, that's all the comments we're having.
Okay, let me start with Bazi Okoye. I hope you can hear me. My earphone is not, but it's raining heavily here where I am in Abuja. So I hope I'm going to shout so that you can hear me.
We can hear you, sir.
Yes. So
we can hear you. Please go ahead.
About philosophy and theory about democracy. I mentioned, I alluded to it when she was asking me a question. That is really not about what is innate for us, for the man in Oka, in Enugu, the person in Agana Bode, the person in Sabongeri in Kano, in Kebi, in everywhere. I think that is the question we should be asking. What kind of leadership will make sure that they do not have to depend on their leaders are running to Abuja every day. The governors have actually, some of them are relocated to Abuja. They are not in their states waiting to collect handouts with which to go and make. They are not even using that for the people. You've had now the issue of VAT collection, River State and Lagos, what they are now saying. Please stop collecting this for us. Let us collect this VAT and use it, because you can't collect 15 billion or trillion and give me only 4. Or you collect 40 or 50 trillion and you give me only 9. That mathematics does not add up. But I can tell you, what is happening is that the political class, they are using this theory and philosophy, and then when it suits them, they cite it, they tell you that is what is happening in America or what is happening in Britain. But at other times, when they want to do their own, because the rich man in Enugu is the one in Kano and the one in Benin, and they work together. The only people that are suffering are the poor people are also all over the place. They are marginaries and people who cannot eat. The women who are going to farm to go and take care of their parents, of their children. These are the segregation that, it's like independence. We say, okay, chase away the colonial masters. But what have the indigenous people done? Have they not done worse than the colonial masters? They have used the template that the colonial masters are used. They live in government house, in government quarters. You have to provide for them. And then you get a car for them, even buy their clothes, wardrobe allowance and all that. They don't pay electricity. They don't pay for water. These are some of the things that the colonial people, masters did. But the indigenous people, Africans, copied it. But when you now come and tell them, go now in Britain or in France or any of these countries to see what these leaders there, the perquisites of office that they are enjoying. Johnson, that is now, he has been a mayor. Now he's a prime minister of Britain. But I can tell you, in his account, you cannot find more than a particular amount of money that you can trace to him. Otherwise, he will brought down. He will answer for it. But Africans are not looking at that. Impunity is what they are using to cover up everything they are stealing, their corruption. But the same colonial master that came here to govern us, and then they chased them away in their own country. Again, I give you another example. Do you know that in former colonial French colonies, because the French colonial masters, usually by 12 o'clock, they take la pause, they take a break because of the sun. In the places like Ouagadougou, in Guinea, Conakry, in Burkina Faso, no, in Cote d'Ivoire, they were taking those posts from 12 o'clock till around 2, those 2 hours, so that they will, because the environment was very hot for them. But do you know what? After they left, most of these African countries, colonial, former French colonies, are still maintaining those black people. They're going on break from 12 to 3. Even students will close. I have lived in French speaking. I know what I'm talking about. And these are
Mr. Ejime.
You know what you lose in 2 hours every day.
Mr.
And then they
Ejime.
go back. Then the students will come back by 3 and close at 6. And that is why you find child pregnancy all over. Because that window of 2 hours, what will a student or people do? They just play around and then begin to produce their children. That's why you go to this formal. I'm telling you part of the problem that they have, where you have child pregnancy and you have, single mothers all over the place. These are some of the issues, but they're insisting on, they're following it. So they copy our so-called political class. They copy what suits them in terms of democracy and then jettison the other one. Otherwise, in other countries, they will tell you, try and you must declare your assets before you take office. How many people have done so? How many? I don't know what has happened. Can you still see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. We can hear you. But I'll ask you that you should please try to summarize because we've passed our time limits.
Okay. All right. So it's more about selfishness, about greed, about inordinate ambition, about avarice, and then wickedness, bearing on wickedness. Because you cannot accumulate and continue to amass what you did not need. For how long? The amount. Look at the former Abacha, the former military ruler, having so many accounts that people you don't even know.
Mr. Ejime, thank you very much. I think that's the much we can take at this point. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, let's. Right. It's been a pleasure hearing from you. We know you have a lot to say on this topic, so maybe another time we continue from there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I want to tell you something before you go. Anyway, we'll stop the live streaming and then just for 2 minutes, and then we start the live stream.